What's up guys, Too Low Tony here, and this video is going to be a little bit different than my normal videos. So it's going to be a little bit more informational rather than technical on working on your car. But this is something that I've been planning for a long time, and I did want to go over everything that you need to know to put a Hellcat supercharger on your LS powered vehicle. So let's hop into it. Alright, so bear with me. I have some notes on my phone here, so I might be checking every now and then, but first things first here that I want to get into, some kind of pros and cons. A lot of people ask why put the the Hellcat supercharger on the LS over the LSA or other traditional superchargers that you can easily just buy and bolt on the LS and be all hunky-dory with and ready to go. So number one pro is definitely price and availability. So if I can, I'll put on screen a couple marketplace listings that I can find just when I'm editing this video. Um, these superchargers are incredibly easy to find on marketplace, like between $1,000 to $2,500, depending on how good of a deal you can find on them. So, I mean, versus an LSA, I'll look right now and see if I can even find one. I mean, let's see, that's an entire engine. But, I mean, yeah, I'm not even having an LSA pop up besides the entire engine. There's just a entire supercharger for entire engine and supercharger for $15,000. So, but, I mean, like, there's Hellcat superchargers all day, every day on Marketplace and eBay, wherever you can get them. I mean, heck, even brand new from the dealership, I think you can order them for a decent price, and they're still made, obviously. So definitely price and availability, number one reason that a lot of people are going with the supercharger option over like the LSA. Another big reason, or a pro, would be the Hellcat supercharger is a 2.4 liter supercharger versus the LSA, which is a 1.9 liter supercharger. So obviously, bigger supercharger means it's going to move more air, more boost, which eventually results in more power. So, I mean, some people are out there taking LSAs off of their car and swapping to the Hellcat supercharger just because it's cheaper than getting a Kong ported supercharger and putting that on there when you can get a Hellcat supercharger a little bit cheaper, probably make around the same power, or port this and make even more. So it's definitely a big upgrade there in terms of size. All right, number two here, we're gonna go over some cons. The only like big con I've seen with these superchargers, and keep in mind I work at a shop that builds Hellcats all day, every day, from stock Hellcats to 1400 horsepower Hellcats. So I have a good understanding of how these superchargers perform. And like you don't really see them come in with bearing issues very often, especially if you ported them and put the race bearings in them, which is how mine is. You know, the biggest con I see to these superchargers at the end of the day is going to be size. They're insanely tall compared to the LSA. I'm not exactly sure how tall the LSA is, but this supercharger off of the valley cover is actually about 12 to 13 inches tall. So it's definitely tall. It's hard to fit under hoods unless you have like a truck that you're putting it on. So that's the biggest con I can see. Otherwise, I think they're great. I mean, you got to put a little bit more work in there, but it's not a ton more than if you're putting an LSA supercharger on your LS. You still got to change the belt stuff. I mean, even on some of these there, I'll talk about later, there's options where you don't have to change to an LSA belt drive. But anyway, yeah, biggest con I see is the size of the supercharger being too big. Obviously, I mean, you're at the side profile here. You can see how much it sticks out of the hood, and it's definitely not going to fit a hood on this car. But I mean, something that looks cool. It's a giant engine sticking out of the hood. So definitely something cool there. All right. So now that we've got the pros and the cons out of the way, the next thing I want to talk about is obviously like the first thing besides the supercharger that you're going to need to buy is a set of adapters, because the Hellcat supercharger doesn't just bolt down onto the LS heads. LS heads have a V patterned intake port that sits like that, and Hemis are flat up top, and then obviously the ports are different shapes. So you're gonna have to run some adapters to physically bolt the supercharger onto the engine. Now, my car has Fabworks adapters. They are one of my partners and supporters on this build, so obviously I'm a little bit biased to them. I've seen a few of the other adapters. I think that Fabworks, in my opinion, has the best looking ones. I mean, obviously performance is hard to go against each other, but I mean, they have an O-ringed groove in there. Everything bolted up great, fit nice. The finish was really nice. They look cool. They're all billet. I'll throw a picture up on the screen if I can. But yeah, like super, super cool from Fabworks. So I definitely recommend going that route, just given that that's what I have on my car and that's what I have experience with. But a few other honorable mentions here. ICT Billet is another one of my supporters. They recently came out with a Hellcat supercharger adapter kit for LS as well, and they definitely have a lot of great information on their website as well that you guys can check out on their Instagram for sure. I'm not sure if it's on their website, but they have some good information on it. The last one that I want to recommend, there is one other company, I'm not sure the name of it, but as far as I know, it's actually like a composite adapter. And personally, I think if I'm going to put an intake adapter on there that's running a lot of heat through it and stuff, I want billet. You know, like, you're spending this money, you might as well put a billet adapter on there. So last one I want to mention that makes a billet adapter is Trinity Performance and Design. As far as I know, they were the first ones to actually have a running car with the Hellcat supercharger on there. So they have a GTO and a CTS-V, so they definitely know what they're doing. Yeah, so that's all the companies that I know of personally. There might be others out there that make at least a billet adapter for the Hellcat supercharger to the LS head. All right, next thing I want to talk about is bypass valves. So the Hellcat supercharger, just like every other supercharger, uses a bypass valve to control the boost. If you don't know a ton about superchargers, it's basically like a wastegate for a supercharger. So it bypasses air past the rotors, so you're not actually compressing it and you're just flowing normal air in when you don't want to be under boost. And then when you lay into it and you want to go on boost, the bypass valve is going to close, force all the air through the rotors, and, you know, obviously turn it into boost. So on my car, I used to have this, which is Fabworks Gen 1. I'll get a little bit closer here. Fabworks Gen 1 bypass valve. It's pretty simple there. It's vacuum controlled. So that is an option that Fabworks still has on their website. They also have a Gen 2 bypass valve that I will show is on my car right now. And it's a little bit sleeker. It doesn't have all this stuff on there or any arms off of it. Pulls vacuum from the inside. It's super, super cool design. And as far as I could tell so far, it functions really, really well. It also still does have a second port if you want to do boost control using a Mac valve, or whatever you want for traction control. Boost by gears, what I'm using it for, and different maps. So those are the two options that I know of for a vacuum operated bypass valve. The third option that you can do for bypass valves on these superchargers is the OEM Hellcat bypass valve, which is basically it's a 5.7 throttle body. I believe 5.7, don't quote me on that, but it's basically just an electronic throttle body. So the way that you control that is you use what's called a smooth boost. So you basically, it's just a wiring kit. You wire it in. I believe it taps into your pedal and goes off of your pedal input. They give you a little knob that you can use for boost control, which is really cool because you can just, you know, turn it down if you want to drive it with no boost. You know, turn it all the way up if you want to go at it. Whatever you want to do, it's super nice. I actually have a discount code with them if you guys do go that route and you want to use it. It should be code TULOTONY. So it should get you 10% off your order. So yeah, they've got that wiring kit. If you want to go that route, it works great. If you want to go the vacuum controlled route, definitely use FabWorks because they are the only ones, as far as I know, that have a proper working vacuum bypass valve. Okay, so we'll go into accessories. There's definitely a few options you can do. I know FabWorks has some more information on running the supercharger off of a accessory belt. That is not what I did. The Hellcat supercharger has a really heavy rotor pack, being a 2.4 liter supercharger. So I definitely recommend going, I would say at least with a 10 rib, but you could probably get away with an 8 rib, but I would go with 10 rib if you have the extra money to put towards that, and it's not really a budget thing because it's just gonna minimalize your belt slip and everything. But anyway, we'll talk about some more of that later, but we're gonna talk about accessory drive first. My car has a CTSV accessory drive, which is -1 spacing. So if you don't have a car that already has an LS in it, you're doing an LS swap and you're throwing, you got to get your accessories on there just like I did. -1 Corvette spacing, I believe Corvette spacing should be -1, is the way to go, because then you can just throw the pulley on the front of your ATI dampener at the bottom, and you've got your LSA belt drive basically just like that. So that is what I'm using. There is some truck stuff, like I said. FabWorks knows all about that. They might have posted something about it, but that is also a possibility. Next thing that you're going to need to figure out, like I said, is your supercharger belt. You can't have a supercharger without a belt on it. Obviously, they're belt driven. So you have to have a belt. Like I said, FabWorks has some accessory belt stuff. That's not the way that I would go. So I'm more making this video to tell you how I would do things and the quote unquote correct way to do it, and not kind of cheap out. If you're going all the way, you want this thing to work fantastic, this is the way that I'm going to tell you should do it. So I would go with a 10 rib belt, like I said. I will show you some clips of mine here. I have a dedicated Motorsports LSA 10 rib supercharger belt kit. So it basically consists of a relocation bracket, a couple pulleys that you swap out on the LSA tensioner. The adapter from FabWorks uses a normal Hellcat pulley from Grip Tech. And then on the bottom, it's just a 10 rib LSA lower pulley. So super easy, bolts right on. One thing I will say that DMS recommended I do was use their billet tensioner bracket that I'll show. And that is because with the heavy rotor pack, some people can experience flex in the tensioner bracket itself, and that can cause your car to kick the belt off, which is never fun, especially if you're racing or drifting, whatever you want to do with this thing. You don't want to be throwing belts all the time. So spend the extra $200, get the billet tensioner bracket. It's super beefy. It should keep you from having a bunch of problems in the future. And yeah, that's definitely the way I would go. Obviously, 8 rib's not going to be as good as 10 rib. Hellcats are factory 10 rib cars. But if you're going to do an 8 rib, everything with the FabWorks stuff will work on the 10 rib Grip Tech pulley. If you just keep a factory LSA belt drive, you could use a factory lower pulley if you want. And then just the normal pulley drive for the supercharger is going to be 8 rib. So that would also work for your situation. Next thing I want to talk about is intercoolers. So these cars, or not these cars, but these superchargers have 2 intercooler bricks that run above the intake ports in them that run coolant through them. So it's basically an air to water system like most superchargers are, except for obviously a ProCharger or centrifugal supercharger. So you need to run water through those somehow. There's a crossover that I'll show on the back of the supercharger. It is about 4 inches from the back of the supercharger out, so it can be hard to fit with your cowl. So what I did is I got a Earl's Performance supercharger, or Hellcat supercharger crossover kit, which is about, I believe, 2.25 inches, so it's about half the size. It hugs everything a little bit closer. It's great for trying to fit closer You'll see I still had to cut my cowl just a little bit, but made everything fit way easier, didn't have to cut as much. Schwartz Performance also makes one. They're both the same price. So it's really just whatever you think looks better. Earl's is all one big like billet piece, and Schwartz is like two billet blocks with hoses in between them. So you can look at them, see what you think's better, see what you like. They're the same price, like I said, and make your own decision there. But as for actually cooling the coolant down, Hellcats have a factory low temp radiator, which is just basically a heat exchanger. So basically you'll run your hoses down, it'll go out of the supercharger into the heat exchanger, which is basically a radiator, and it'll go through the heat exchanger, out of there, and then usually you'd have your pump on the return side. You can kind of put it wherever you want, but I would do it after the heat exchanger. Dumps into a pump. I mean, you could see right here, I have a Pureberg CWA 400, which is what I would recommend. It's one of the fastest flowing pumps on the market. They're definitely not cheap, but it's the way to go. There's people using Prius water pumps, all kinds of other stuff. But, I mean, anything that's going to flow the water is going to work, but the faster you flow it is going to be the better. So CWA 400 is going to be the way to go for your pump. And then it'll come out of your pump and straight back up into your supercharger. And that'll basically just be your coolant loop. It's going to go through, heat up, cool down, go through, heat up, cool down, and it'll cool it. Now, if you want to go the extra mile and you really want to get your intake air temps cold, what you can do is run an interchiller, which is what I have on my car. And basically, the only difference with an interchiller is you replace that low temp radiator with a chiller brick, which is, I mean, yay big, about like 12 inches long or so, like 4 or 5 inches wide. I can maybe get some video of it and show you guys. It's basically just a big black brick. Coolant flows in and out of it just like the low temp radiator, but you also have a C Freon flowing through it as well that super cools the coolant, and you will see intake air temps of 50 degrees and below. It's insane how cold these things can get. And I mean, if you're putting supercharger on your car, you probably know that the colder your intake air temps, the safer it is, the more timing you can throw at stuff. I mean, it's all super, super important to keep everything cold. Colder is better. Colder makes more horsepower, and it's just better all around. So interchiller is definitely the way to go if you can. If you have AC, you can do it with AC in your car. FI Interchillers has a bunch of stuff. They have kits for every car, universal kits, whatever you want. My car doesn't have interior AC, so I'm running just straight through the chiller, but you can do it with interior AC as well. So super cool option there. It's going to keep everything running super, super cold, and honestly is the best option in my opinion. So now that we've talked about cooling the supercharger, we need to talk about everybody's favorite thing, some electronic stuff. So obviously you can run your normal LS throttle body. FabWorks makes adapter plates. ICT Billet makes adapter plates. Trinity Performance makes adapter plate. Everybody makes an adapter plate to put an LS throttle body on a Hellcat supercharger. I have a standalone ECU, which you don't have to do. You can run these on a stock ECU. But with a standalone, I was able to keep my Subaru pedal and put it in with a 108 millimeter Nick Williams Hellcat throttle body, just to obviously match the port and keep everything flowing better, make more horsepower, and all that good stuff. So you can run your stock throttle body. It'll plug right in. I think you might be able to splice in the Hellcat stuff. I'm not 100% sure on that. I haven't figured that out yet. But you run the stock LS throttle body. As for map sensors, got some people doing polls outside. As for map sensors, the Hellcat supercharger has 4 map sensors on it. There's one on the lid, there's one on the snout, one in the front, what would be on an LS, that would be cylinder 2, and then there's one in the back above what on an LS would be cylinder 7. So, yeah, there's those 4 map sensors. Obviously, LSs don't have 4 map sensors. So what I did is I used the map sensor in the front above cylinder 2, and I used a factory, I believe it's a LS9 map sensor. It doesn't bolt right in, but it's actually pretty simple to put on. Obviously, you have your bolt hole on the sensor. All I did was chop it off, so it's now a U, and then the bolt goes in perfectly fine. It's not going to pop out. The bolt's still holding it. You just put a washer behind it, and it still looks nice, and nothing's wrong. It pops right in there. The O-ring fits and everything. So that's what you do for the map sensor. I mean, you can use any like 3-bar LS map sensor that you can program into your ECU. I just use the LS9 because I know it's simple. As for intake air temp, if you're on speed density, what I did is that back map sensor hole above cylinder 7, you take a M14 by 1.5, I believe, tap, drill the sensor hole out, and then tap it, and then your IAT sensor will thread right into that hole. And it's great because it's after the intercooler, so it's going to read your actual temperature of your air going directly into your cylinder. And then everything works perfect with that. I mean, that's really the only two sensors on it, are those two as far as I can think here. Yeah. So IAT and map sensor, super simple. Tap the back one for the map sensor, use the front one, and then for the other holes on the lid and on the snout, ICT Billet sells a LSA map sensor plug that fits. It's tight. Make sure you lube the O-rings really good, but they will pop in there and plug the holes. They're nice. They're billet. They're like 25 bucks. You can also get them with a 1/8 inch NPT plug if you need to run a line off of there for a boost reference or anything. So super, super cool there. They just pop right in. And that's pretty much it for electronic. I want to touch really quick on injectors and fuel rails and fueling. As for my car, it's on E85. As soon as we go to E85 at my shop that I work at, we go E85 on Hellcats, like when we go to like 950 crank horsepower. So we run an ID 1300 injector. Obviously, you're going to use Hellcat injectors, the correct sizing for them. ID 1300 is plenty for what 99% of people are going to do for this setup if you're running E85. Otherwise, I've seen people run stock Hellcat injectors and get the data for them. I mean, you can run any CC injector you want as long as it is a Hellcat injector. It's very important that you don't try and shove an LS injector in there because the O-ring sizing could be different, the length could be different. You're gonna hate life. So Hellcat injector. If you're running a return style fuel system, you can run any Hellcat fuel rail that you can get on the market. I have 4 Innovations fuel rails. They work great, bolt on, super, super nice. Another option I've seen other people do is run the stock Hellcat fuel rails, which have just a deadhead system that goes straight in on one, crosses over. So you can also make a line to do that if you're not trying to go crazy horsepower and run like the Corvette pump or whatever I think I've seen people do. But yeah, you can do a returnless system on these if you want. Return style is usually the way to go. If you're boosting your car, you want to make more horsepower, I would go return style just to have the room to grow. If there's one thing you don't want to cheap out on, it is your fuel system. If you run out of fuel, your car is not going to be happy. So make sure if you're going to spend money on one thing, spend your money on your fuel system. On this car, I am running 2 Hellcat 525 liter per hour fuel pumps. So Hellcats and Trackhawk stock come with 2 fuel pumps. So I would try to do 2 fuel pumps if you can. If you're not trying to go, above 700-800 horsepower, you could probably get away with 1. Do some research on your fuel system. I would recommend 2 if you can get a dual pump hanger for your car. And that's just what I would do. Set your fuel pressure 59.5 psi like normal, 60 psi, whatever you want. So that's basically it for the fuel system side of things to do this supercharger swap. Okay, so for the most part, I think that's basically everything that you need to know to put this supercharger on an LS. You're going to bolt it on with whatever adapters you choose. you're going to run either an LSA belt, 10 rib or 8 rib, or you're going to figure out what Fabworks is recommending to run truck accessories or whatnot with that closer spacing belt. You're going to put an IAT sensor in the back of the supercharger, run an LS9 map sensor in the front hole, plug the hole in the lid in the snout, and then you're going to run your LS throttle body, or you can try and mess around with pitting a Hellcat throttle body on there. You're going to figure out what coolant crossover works on the back of the supercharger for you. Run your hoses, get coolant in it somehow, whether you're using an interchiller or a low temp radiator. And yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Like, these superchargers are pretty simple, and everything works great on them. So go out there, buy a Hellcat supercharger, slap it on an LS, make some boost, and have some fun. Thank you guys for watching this video. I did a lot of time researching and figuring stuff out for this video. Got a lot of time into building this car. If you guys liked the video, or you want to see some more of this car running in action, because it's going to be out on the road very soon. It's moving under its own power now. It's got a few more things to wrap up on it. Drop a subscribe. I'm really trying to get my channel to the point where I can monetize it and start trying to help out funding some of this build. So yeah, like, subscribe, comment. Yeah, drop a comment below. What do you want to put a Hellcat supercharger on? Anyway, see you guys in the next one. Peace out.